All right, today is December 8th, Wednesday. A little rainy out. So, as I continue in my foray of discovering resources to bolster my tool belt here, if you've been watching any of the videos, I did a really deep dive into Mark Passio, a lot of his presentations, and got up to about episode 200 in his podcast. And it was about 10 or 15 before that he kind of culminated his multi-year story with the Cosmic Abandonment. And he is still the most relevant single resource I have discovered in explaining, as his website says, what on earth is happening. And I've been able, now that I've kind of finished him, to jump to some other more modern resources. People like James Corbett, the Corbett Report, who's been working on exposing truth for the last 20 years, post 9/11. Richard Grove, who had actually produced one of Passio's presentations, getting into a few other Odyssey channels. And I'm obviously struggling, as anyone would, as they continue to dive deeper into truth. And I want to come up with my own content. I'm sure I've made mention of this in the past. And it's dawning on me that there are essentially three general topics to focus on. And the guys I just recently mentioned, Corbett and Richard Grove and the like, Red Ice TV, etc. So these are guys that are going to be primarily exposing truth in the form of the modern era of problems. So think of any of the major systems that exist. So we got big ag, big pharma, right? So you got health, education, medicine, food, agriculture, government, finance, religion. There seems to be a big system behind that, and interwoven into that is just heaps and heaps and piles of evil, for lack of a better term, and control and tyranny. And these guys are doing such a great job of explaining it, exposing it. And what I mean by in the modern era is, as far as I can tell, or from my point of view, most people's view of history is going to be about 100 to 150 years old, because if you go back about 150 years, we're getting the advent of widely distributed electricity. Then we've got the creation of the Fed. Then we got World War II, and it just snowballs with all the events that we know about. Obviously, this is from the perspective of an American citizen. And before that, you start to break it up into these much larger swaths with just these general topics of what existed, right? You got the Civil War, Revolutionary War. We came over from England. We were in the Renaissance, Dark Ages, Romans, Greeks. All right, Egyptians. So it's highly disparate, and where people have more minutia, more details, is going to be the last 100, 150 years. And this is really when we're seeing that industrial revolution, and now in the last 20, 30 years, this technological revolution, etc. And much easier to explain the problems of the last 100 years, because those are the ones most prescient today, right? The big ag, the big tech, all those things, big pharma, are going to be culminations that are going to be brought into existence in our relative recent past. So these guys are doing such an amazing job as independent researchers, and still going back farther in time, but they're bringing it up to date by talking about the problems, and not only problems, but mainly focused on that. The other major piece of content that people can create would be those that are providing solutions, and they can be in the same group, but a lot of the solutions folks aren't necessarily as hyper aware of the extent of the scope of all the problems. They might just be providing amazing solutions in the field that they're in, kind of independent of recognizing the other problems. So a great example of this would be the folks that are putting out information regarding permaculture. This is an amazing solution for us to cohabitate with nature, understand the ability to stack functions, how you can have, not just a garden, but an amazing way of life on like a quarter of an acre in a suburban neighborhood. So Jeff Lawton and Mollison and Holmgren, kind of the pioneers of that, they aren't necessarily having done a deep dive into the historicity of all the other problems that we talked about. They have just stumbled upon or researched and learned about this particular avenue, and then they are disseminating the information and providing solutions within their field of study. In other words, a lot of people won't know the third category, which ties it all together, and this would be the Mark Passio category, which explains why things are the way they are, so much as this is what's happening, here's our problems, and here's our solutions. The third category is the deep dive into the long view of history. And when I say long view, I mean, okay, we're going to go back to Egypt, Babylon, Sumeria, the Phoenicians, the Canaanites. Okay, what came before that? And can we start to pinpoint that? Where are the origins of mankind? And that's ultimately the Cosmic Abandonment explanation from Mark Passio. So you have these three main categories, and the vast majority of people are in the first two, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm merely trying to find my way in terms of the type of content I can create, and the more I research and take in and download, the broader and deeper my understanding and knowledge base gets, so that I can create something unique that I can display and share with other people. And I'm really feeling like the backbone is going to be piggybacking from Passio's work in regards to helping people understand the why things are happening, and interweaving into that the very apparent what is transpiring. Because if you can't smell the own shit on your knees, you're never going to get up out of it. So people need to see that we're kneeling, and then understand why we're doing it, so that we can prevent the continuance of that. And I had just finished the book Slave Species of God by Michael Tellinger, which puts forth quite the theory regarding the origins of mankind, and it's supported by the ancient Sumerian texts that have been recorded in cuneiform, a type of writing, in clay tablets, and there's like thousands of them, and they overlap amazingly with different stories in the Bible, but predate it by thousands of years. And it puts forth an idea of where we really came from in regards to some splicing of DNA. And it's with that understanding of where we originated that we can more easily understand why we are doing the things we're doing, which will hopefully lead to unlocking our capabilities to start to put down this tyranny and ever encroaching at like an exponentially fast-paced authoritarian regime that seems to be interweaving itself into every facet of life in every country here in the post-COVID world. So it's kind of a quick reflection on the content I'm looking to try to get into creating. Hopefully can find some sort of visual media outlet. It won't be too complicated as far as creating, to put together little stories, so to speak, to kind of help put forth a truthful narrative, as words are so very, very powerful, despite what they want us to believe, as we have an amazing oral tradition throughout humankind of passing stories along from one generation to the next. And as the other side puts forth their great narrative, we need to be prepared to counter that with a story of truth, that we can reach people on an individual level if we have any hope in securing our liberty going forward. So that's what I'll be working on.